Tonight, we're going to be talking about pretty big automotive news, some major news for Ford. So really you could say the whole, the plan of the show is we're going to talk general about automotive news that affects Ford and also use examples at Ford to also help really back up and explain that automotive news. So to kind of have facts and data. And well, I'm dressed in my facts and data outfit. I'm wearing a bow tie because we're going to be talking a good amount about facts and data this evening. So thank you everyone for making it for the live. For those of you that are in the comments section, really appreciated. I see M. Peugeot is paying us to be on time, so thank you. $50 is a ton of money. Please, no, I hope no one feels that that's something that's like should be done. That's just wild, and I guess that's for $1 for every 1,000 miles he's done this year.
That's a lot, by the way.
That is a lot, and he's actually done it with an EcoBoost. So what's really cool is he's really letting me plug really what this show is about. A big portion of this show is, of course, automotive news, Ford news, and don't be fooled. Yes, it's the thumbnail, and there is a lot of don't be fooled to talk about. There's don't be fooled on the Maverick. There's don't be fooled on the F-150 Lightning. Really pretty much all Ford models. We'll talk about some future news and what we can expect from Ford in the years to come. Marie has stopped having expectations with Ford because, well, you can remind them if there's any new viewers here watching this later on.
Yeah, I'm still waiting, so I stopped expecting. So.
And when did you order your Maverick, or when did I order your Maverick for you?
Yeah, not July this year, but the one before, so in 2021, so more than 1 year. And before that, I was waiting for an Escape plug-in 10 months before that. So
almost a year, 11 months, because all these dates are in my mind. Yes, it was 11 months, hun.
Now it's been 2 years and 2 months that I'm waiting for something.
And she gave up, sorry, I shouldn't say she, Marie, my sweetheart, gave up on that Escape plug-in. And 1 month later, she would have gotten a VIN number and a build date. So we're trying not to quit out of her Maverick order. It's hard. It's frustrating. It requires patience. We almost bought a Lincoln Corsair plug-in because Ford's plug-in vehicles are actually quite good. Really like them. Surprising power and handling. But let's get to the major automotive news, but actually right before jumping into that, to give you a little bit of encouragement, my love.
Thank you.
2023 Maverick production has started. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice to know?
Yay!
They're making 2023 Ford Mavericks. Mind you, just for fleet customers for the moment. So that's like huge companies like, let's say, Bell Canada, General Electric. Fleet sales is not your local, painter or normal size construction company, small business. And speaking of businesses, M. Peugeot actually has an incredible amount of miles on his EcoBoost. And I'd like him to put that in the chat because we're going to be talking about EcoBoost and how you should not be fooled about EcoBoost technology, because there's a lot of talk about how it's just horribly unreliable and, just a really bad decision. Avoid Ford altogether unless you get on one of the non-EcoBoost engines. Well, in the trucks, it's about 85% of the sales at Ford, and we're not having major problems. So we'll talk about that. I'll even do a nice little short video coming up on high mileage F-150 that I just picked up, not for my personally, but my dealership. And it has 190,000 miles or 306,000 kilometers. And we'll talk about a bit about that in the show. And well, you were driving my F-150, and that had also just under 300,000 kilometers, and we still sold it for a pretty penny. Now, getting right into what we promised for the show, we're now putting the pedal to the metal. And let's talk about what's going on in the automotive world. So kind of disappointed, kind of worried. We're going to talk about microchips and shortages, but before that, let's talk a little about electric vehicles. Hopefully we don't lose any of you. This is just some short talk. VW told journalists from across what Thomas Schaefer said. He's a global head at VW, and he said, at the moment we have a clear lineup all the way through the second half of this decade. Then again, in the American market, if you don't play in certain segments, then you have to stay in a certain market share area, meaning they're going to focus on this SUVs, which is, that's just saying it. We're not getting an electric VW truck. And that worries me because the Amarok, the VW Amarok, that's their Ranger, it's running off the Ford Ranger's platform. That worries me because I hope Ford and VW don't have an agreement together saying that they're going to bring out their electric trucks together. So really hoping that we will get an electric truck, the EV Ranger electric vehicle from Ford. And I would suspect that, well, I'll let you ask the question, Maddie. Yeah. I feel you've got a question for me.
Yeah, I had a few questions for you tonight. So the first one, when can we order and drive away with the new Ranger?
Great question. Well, it won't be an electric Ranger quite yet, and I do have some really educated speculation on that. But basically, we should probably be ordering up the new model Ranger, so not the 2023, but for our market, the 2024 Ranger this spring. Sometime this spring, March, April, May. We'll put in those reservations if Ford goes with reservations, and then they haven't announced when they're going to start building them, but oddly, they have announced when they're going to stop building 2023s, and that is in July. So in July 2023, they're obviously going to start making the 2024, the new model Ranger, and it will come with a 2.3 liter. And a little inside talk is we're being told, dealers are being told that we'll get a 2.7 liter twin turbo V6, which would be amazing because it's fantastic in the Bronco. How have you felt about it in the Bronco? You like that engine we've got? Our two Broncos?
Yeah, it goes well. When I go in another car, I'm like, okay, no, it's not like the Bronco.
It's missing power.
I'm always surprised. Yeah. The first time we drove it, we see the power, and finally I get, how can I say that? Not used to? Is it the
you get used to it. You get spoiled by the power.
After that, I drove the F-150. It's powerful, but it's not the same. So I remember now. Okay, yeah, how it felt in the Bronco is super powerful.
Yeah. Now, do keep in mind that you probably shouldn't buy my electric F-150 Lightning, because once you drive that, now for all the gearheads out there, generally a lot of the it's a lot of more tech savvy, like tech bow tie wearing people that like these electric vehicles, and your traditional gearheads, your traditional automotive enthusiast community, which I am a part of, very much so, are not on board quite as much for the electric vehicles. And it is like a drug. I'm sure if you drive this Lightning and you put the pedal down to the metal, you're not going to want to drive anything else afterwards unless you miss the sound of an engine. So Ford, please, automotive industry, this is where you should copy Dodge. The new Dodge Charger prototype, they brought it out and it makes noise. So they funneled noise from the electric engine. Magic happens between the electric engine up front and the exhaust. Well, it's not exhaust, but the sound piping in the back. They basically made the Dodge Charger is essentially a really expensive musical instrument, but it sounds great. So you heard it first. Johnny at Johnny's Car Care and Reviews said that the Dodge Charger is an overpriced musical instrument. But really, I'm probably the tool, not the vehicle, because it actually would probably be a pretty sweet ride. Sweet vehicle, but overpriced instrument. So back to that news. Really hoping that the EV Ranger does happen before the VW. However, I do suspect that's going to be at the Blue Oval site. And by the way, the Blue Oval site, it's coming. That's where the Lightnings are going to be made in the future, honey. It's in Tennessee. Our friends Dave and Kelly from All Terrain Nation are out in Tennessee, and they're actually not far from that site. And what's great about that site is it is coming along well, and they've said that the 2025 Lightning will be built there. And that's the only model that's supposed to be built there for 2025. However, 2026 or 2027 is where I highly, highly suspect that we'll get an EV Ranger, because reading the tea leaves, really reading between quotes between VW and Ford, the next EV truck we're getting is the Ranger when you read in between quotes. So that'd be some educated speculation, but I really expect this to be happening. Now, not so educated speculation coming right up. I'll be good for this one. One thing is for sure, Ford is testing some very interesting vehicles. They're currently testing out the Toyota Supra, the Chevy Corvette Z06, GMC Hummer EV, and Polestar 2. And well, they're benchmarking, meaning they're trying these vehicles out and seeing, what makes them special. And usually you play up, you benchmark against your competitors where you're going to have a model. So a Hummer EV, a Corvette, a Toyota Supra, and, well, a Porsche Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid. Well, what would kind of average out all those vehicles? Well, I'd say an electric Thunderbird. So Ford has patented the name Thunderbird, re-patented. I guess you got to stay up to date on those things. So Ford is reserving that name. And based on what they're benchmarking, I would not be surprised within 2 to 3 years, unless the plans get canceled. I would think that there's pretty decent chances that we're going to find out what Ford really envisions as a modern day Thunderbird. The 1950s model was pretty incredible. Then the Corvette came out and kind of stole the show on the two doors. But for a while, they were selling a lot of those two-door Thunderbirds. They were very special. And of course, they got far too big and hefty in the 1970s. They were making those Thunderbirds pretty built, like this poodle right here. So just a interruption in the show to say thank you everyone for helping to feed and dress those poodles. And Peugeot, you tip too often because you basically most of the poodle clothes has been paid with your tips. So, but
thank you so much.
And also a huge thank you to all our members, and because you're tipping us every single month, so don't tip if you're a member. And if you are a subscriber and you hit that like button, that is a great way to help us out as well. So I'm Peugeot saying a Ferrari Vision GT, then a Thunderbird. More a Ferrari Vision GT. That probably would be a better averaging out of those. But they are, they're even checking out the Toyota Tundra. And I don't know how that fits in there, but we'll see what Ford, they've thrown all these vehicles into the pot, and let's see what stew they try to serve us. Sorry, that sounded horrible. That just kind of came out. So Ford, GMC, all Dodge, so Stellantis, the North American automakers. I'd like to mention that I'm pretty happy to hear that they're working on having a self-sufficient supply chain of batteries by 2030. So definitely we need that. We need to not be dependent on other countries because, obviously, if all the batteries are coming from one place in the world, they're going to favor themselves before they favor others. And historically, in regards to looking at economics, the peak of North American well-being, economic well-being, was in the 1950s. And in the 1950s, I don't have the exact stat up there in that memory, but it was about 80 or 85% of the world's production of non-food items. So anything really electrical and whatnot, all those nice gross products with a good amount of profit behind them. Basically anything complicated, the US or Canada was making. So let's try to get some production back home. Now, getting on to more precise automotive news, and I haven't forgotten, we will properly cover more Ford Maverick, Ford Bronco, Ford F-150 news, because I've got some really exciting news to share for those models. A little less exciting and kind of negative if you're hoping for a 2023 Ranger. And we are going to be talking chip shortages and really the actual impact over here at Ford. So generally, let's talk about, before we get into just Ford, let's talk about the general market. So general market is that, the chip shortage is getting a little better. So chip shortage, problems and solutions. We've had a lot of problems. 2021 production was quite low. The entire industry made 10 4.5 million less vehicles. So that's from Automotive News, and they take their data from Auto Forecast Solutions. So 10.5 million less vehicles than what had been hoped for, or what would have automakers would have liked to have built in 2021. Now, what is it this year? Well, the predictions have moved around. In October, they were saying it was roughly about 4.2 million less vehicles. Now they're talking about 4.485 million less vehicles for the 2022 year. That is still a lot better. So, Marie, that's good news for your Maverick, and I'll share specific good news about production for your Maverick and other popular Ford models after we get through the general news. But there's still a chip shortage. So I don't want to be painting an incredible picture saying, hey, there's no longer a chip shortage. There's still a chip shortage, but it's less severe than what it was. And Ford and other automakers, North American automakers, are working to become more independent instead of being very dependent on other countries, not just for batteries, but for chips as well. So
That's a good news.
it is a good news. And let's say you get the bad news. Ford Explorer. Promised I'd talk about the Ford Explorer. Here you go. I had a friend of mine has a wonderful Explorer Timberline. Love it. Green, looks great. He didn't have, on the second row, so behind the driver and passenger, that's the second row seating. A nice vehicle like that is supposed to have its own controls for the temperature. And what's really cool is he dived into it, and the control module is actually, it's not Ford that builds it, it's another company that builds it, and he's trying to get his hands on a new unit. Mind you, they're trying to keep them for, in case there's recalls or broken models. But there are some of these sitting around, so you don't necessarily have to get it from the used, a scrapped Explorer, but it's a really quick fix. It's a matter of popping the trim, I think 4 screws or bolts that he explained to me, and then plug and unplug. So it's max 30 minutes of work, and you can actually get this unit for about $100 Canadian, new. So some of what we thought would be, long-term permanent problems with our Fords, already there's one solution to really help offset the chip shortage, because it's because of the chip shortage that vehicle, your kids, or if you're a chauffeured adult, why you don't have controls on your heating and temperature from your second row. Okay, so moving right along, what's inventory looking like right now? So did mention that 4.485 million less vehicles produced for 2022. But that's still better than 2021. Demand has gone down a little bit because interest rates have gone up. So we all know that they're using interest rate hikes to help cool inflation, get people spending less money. And well, what does that mean? That means that you're going to see yards with vehicles in them, a lot of vehicles in them. So you got the picture behind me. I could show you other vehicles, but we've got a nice Mach-E there. Well, that's a client's. You've got an Edge ST line. That is not a client's. That is actually inventory that Ford sent. So on models that aren't, really hot right now, there is actual inventory being sent to dealerships. And we could talk more about stats and data, but when you look at stats and data, it looks like the inventory supply across all manufacturers is getting considerably better. But that's actually, most of this is all already sold units. So it still counts as inventory, whether it's a customer order or actual for sale inventory stock, it gets called inventory. And as such, it's really important to keep in mind that you're going to hear that, that there's vehicles, lots of vehicles for sale. No, there's lots of vehicles on lots, and about 90% to 95% of them are spoken for, meaning they are specifically ordered for a customer, like Marie's hybrid that she's waited so far over a year for, a year and a half. It's going to count as inventory, and all your huge, data grabbing, collecting, and information sharing sites, all these companies, they're looking at inventory and they're counting those vehicles that are already spoken for. But I can attest that, looking over my own lot, I can tell you that there are definitely a few vehicles that are available. You know, there's about 20 F-150s sitting on the lot, and there is currently one for sale. It's a canceled, and it actually, sorry, there was one for sale, then we got another load in, so we're now at about 25, and we've got 5 or 6 trucks for sale. That's because Ford was able to send some inventory of F-150s that are really not complex and don't require a lot of microchips. So they're sent out as F-150 XLT 300, so a base XLT, no heated seats, no power seats. Now, before I get on to more news, I just want to cover, I think, Ridgeview. Do you want to read out his question?
Just a moment, I'll search it. Okay, so yeah, did Mary order the Lux package and 360 Copilot for Maverick?
Yep.
So only the luxury package, not the 360 Copilot. And yes, it's an XLT. Yeah, so that's perfect. Yeah, so just XLT, hybrid, and Lux package, that's all.
Yes, so you're getting a hitch. And while hitches are severely constrained on the Maverick, and evidence to show that the chip shortage is getting better, and to various degrees depending on the manufacturer, but at Ford the chip shortage is not resolved, but it is getting better because now the luxury package, and of course some people dropped the luxury package, but under the current amount of orders that are in, the luxury package isn't really constrained anymore. What's holding you back is your hitch.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So sorry about that, but that's the truth. Tim Bartz from Long MacArthur Ford said it best: ditch the hitch. He even said, created a hashtag for it. He said, hashtag ditch the hitch. So he said it quite well. And of course, if you have it in your package, well, Ford should be, you know, the amount of hitches they have, it should go to the packages that cannot be completed without that hitch. So if you've got a standalone hitch, once we can make changes, I do recommend that you drop the hitch, obviously. And make sure your dealership agrees that they say they can make changes.
And you know what? The WB said, I think Johnny looks like he could pull a rabbit out of his hat, and it will be a Mary's Maverick. Now, when it will happen, I want you to put balloons in the studio. So, yeah. To tell me that my Maverick is has a VIN number.
And because it's no time soon, it'll probably be in our new office that we're going to build in the basement of our house, because we'll get consistent temperatures. I've done videos where this room is about 32 degrees, 33 degrees Celsius, and unbelievably humid. So we'll work on getting you better sweat-free videos. Now, before I get back to the news, I think you've got a question for me.
Yeah, another question. So now that we were talking about my Maverick, can I change my Maverick order?
Oh, that's a great question. It's funny.
Because I need to ditch the hitch.
Yeah, you can't ditch the hitch because you'd have to ditch your entire luxury package. So Maverick
that's the problem.
must know. Last I verified, making major changes will set you back. So you can't ditch your hitch because it's on your luxury package. So you basically, what you can do, you cannot change trims. That's going to reset your date, and that's going to be quite problematic. So you can't, go from front wheel drive to all wheel drive. Here in Canada, if you take an EcoBoost, you're getting all wheel drive straight up. So you can't switch from front wheel drive to all wheel drive, meaning you can't, and you also can't switch powertrains. So you can't just say, I'm tired of waiting for a hybrid. We know the battery obviously is held up quite a bit. And it's held up. It's not that the factory's not getting any. It's just almost 75% of people ordered a hybrid. And Ford is going to be struggling to make, who knows, maybe one day they'll be making them 50-50. We've seen some months where production between hybrid and EcoBoost was 50-50. But that's overall for the 2023 model year. I really do not think that they're going to be going to 50-50. We'll have to see what happens. But this is why Ford is working on having their own supply of batteries, which I think will make worlds of difference. Now, Bronco Sport, you know what? I'll save the really good news about your Maverick for just a moment, because
really good news.
Really good news. So I should, however, finish up just quickly talking about the chip shortage. So, it would appear that inventory is down 75% from 2 years ago. And this is according to, I got this little tip from Zach and Ray. They've got an amazing show. They're fantastic in data, and they're looking at 4Eyes, and it's 4Eyes that was saying that at Ford, 75% inventory down compared to 2 years ago, but 43% better than 1 year ago. And that's just because 1 year ago, we were getting almost no inventory. And by inventory, I mean customer orders. And now it's 43% up because customer orders are coming in with the occasional model. If, you know, there's not my dealership actually doesn't have much of a F-150 waiting list. If there's an F-150 that didn't get built as a 2022, it's only because it was a model requiring a lot of microchips. The panoramic roof, it had several constraints on it. And instead of getting those orders to come in, Ford was still able to make F-150s. So like, well, here's some actual stock inventory, meaning open for everyone, not ordered in a customer's name, that we're giving you. So we got quite a few of those. And we really don't have much of we don't really have an F-150 waiting list, and we even don't really have much of a Bronco waiting list. Right now, the only reason a Bronco would be waiting is if it was just recently ordered, because obviously then it needs to wait, because we probably can expect to be able to order a 2023 Bronco if you've never ordered a Bronco before, if you don't currently have one on order, January or February. Ford's saying February. I still think that, and I called this on the Maverick, I had said, we're being told that hybrids would arrive in 2022, and I was saying they're going to put some out for Christmas. I was pretty certain of it, and it happened. So sometimes I call them. I usually call them right, and sometimes I call them wrong. So I feel like you might have another question
my
for me.
one question for you. Because this week I told you maybe after the Maverick, when I will have it, I will place an order for maybe a Mach-E, because I really love that. So I want to know, will Ford electric vehicle price will come down? Because I want a Mach-E, but I can't afford it. So
that is honest of you. And fair, that is fair and honest. So prices on EVs will come down, and they're not going to come down anytime soon, because for prices on EVs to come down, there's a few ways this could happen. Demand for lithium would need to go down. It's not going to go down. Governments are forcing EV manufacturers to make and sell EVs. So demand is only going to skyrocket. Whether there's actual human demand, the manufacturers have to build them. So demand's going to go up. So the real way, and what probably will happen, is as soon as we get batteries that don't rely on lithium, don't rely on the other more costly, what you could say, semi-rare resources, well, then yes, battery prices will go down. For example, if they can get batteries made of aluminum, like graphene aluminum, for example, then yeah, it makes sense if prices came down, because aluminum isn't that expensive. So we know aluminum doesn't cost very much. When you go to Costco, you literally bought us a roll that's probably going to last our entire lifetime. The thing was hard to lift to put into the closet.
Yeah, you're talking about the wrap for the food. Yeah,
yeah, the aluminum food wrap. So,
yeah.
So just a little non-automotive joke, but related to the automotive industry. Now, I just want to point out, actually, I'll let you point this one out. We got a really good question, and it's actually John B. Meanstroke, one of our members, that pointed this out to me. It kind of popped up, and I was like, "Oh, I got to cover this." So I'll let you cover it.
Lily just won't let me read it. She's eating the sheet. I'll give it to you.
Okay, so Lily's eating the sheet. So John B. Meanstroke pointed out that Mighty Angel Open Book mentioned that he bought an F-150 Lightning Lariat at only $4,000 over suggested retail. Now, I know that might sound wild to some of you, that I'm saying only $4,000 over retail, and I'm completely against over retail. It's because we've seen worse. What's the highest number you recall seeing?
Oh my!
Don't think you're going to be exaggerating.
I don't remember what you told me, but I guess. Is it too much, 10 or 20?
It was 50,000.
50,000, oh my God.
It was 50,000 over MSRP. Now, That's rough, and I'm totally against it, and so's Ford. Ford's gone through the entire process of telling Ford dealers, no, you have contracts on internal combustion engines. Those contracts will be renewed, and do expect major changes because some dealers, bad apples, have kind of, ruined it. But they made new contracts for EVs, and dealers need to jump on board. Come 2023, they're going to be spending either nothing and not have any right to sell EVs, or 500,000, and they can sell very few EVs, about 25 a year. Obviously, only some like way out backwoods dealership would do that. Everyone's going to be signing up for the 1.1 or 1.2 million investment. A few superchargers, they cost a couple $100,000 a piece for the really heavy duty major 1950s fridge sized chargers, so like the 300 amps, I believe. So we're going to need to invest in those. It's going to cost a lot of money, and then we get the right to sell EVs at, signed on paper, they need to be at MSRP. You might ask, what is MSRP? Well, simply put, it's suggested retail, or manufacturer's suggested retail price, meaning the price Ford puts on the internet, that's the price that they need to sell it to you at. So I look forward to that because I think everyone should get the same fair deal. I think it's really important that everyone gets the same fair deal. And these days, under today's current market, I'd say for an order, if it's that one inventory that's available, one unit available in a 2,000 or 1,000 mile radius, and it's fallen as inventory, that's one thing. But anyone who orders should absolutely be getting the window sticker price, or at whatever internet rebates or advantageous, or these days unadvantageous, interest rate that may be available on the internet website. But moving forward, I do suspect Ford, I think the days of rebates are going to be over. It devalues, it removes value on your Ford trade, changes people's impression and image of the entire brand if your vehicle doesn't hold value very well. So let's say like a BMW, an Audi, or a Mercedes outside of warranty, that doesn't bode well for brand image. If you buy a Dodge Ram 1500 and it says 50,000 in the window sticker, but everyone that year got an average of $10,000 off, so then after 1 year you go to trade it in and you're being told it's worth $30,000, well, mentally you're saying, okay, my Ram law is worth only $30,000 or maybe even less. I think Toyota does it right, very few rebates, and pretty much everyone gets more or less the same price. These days, no, Toyota dealerships are also selling over MSRP. Tesla, I think they've got the right recipe. Speaking of the right recipe, when will these prices come down? So I generally like to say I'm here to help. I'm here to save you thousands. Prices are, we've already seen MSRP coming down. The F-150 Lightning that was pointed out is an example. 50,000 and quite often 20 or 30,000 over MSRP. Now we're finding some Lightnings at 4,000 over MSRP. I think soon, and by soon I mean in a matter of a couple of months, 6 months, pretty much all dealerships are going to be not doing this whole over MSRP nonsense. I think we'll still see some, dealer fees of 1,000 or 1,500. Some, you get to the dealership and you find out that, you have to get the nitro in the tires, or maybe by then they'll call it something else, like really expensive tinted windows that they don't do because they come tinted from factory. PPF, basically like a clear wrap protection, when the cost is, let's say, $300 for what they offer you, they'll tell you it's $1,200. That we're still going to see that. That's just, you go back to the 1980s and cars were being sold with stripes on them, and it was like the stripe package, and they're adding like a ridiculous amount, to the equivalent of about $1,500 or $2,000 today. Even in the early 90s, stripe packages at $1,000. And that was a lot of money in the early 1990s. So that's going to continue. If you're looking at buying a vehicle and you found something in a yard now that's at MSRP, I'd say buy it. If you're thinking that if you wait 2 or 3 months, it's going to be 5,000 over MSRP, I really, really don't suspect that, especially not from Ford. Really, not from Ford, not from Toyota. Doubtful at Honda. Very likely at Dodge because that's always been their recipe, and they're already in the rebates right now, but that's because they had inventory throughout the entire crisis. One, they always had more inventory, but demand went a little down when some manufacturers like Ford, demand went through the roof. Do recall the Ford Maverick, 60% of Ford Maverick purchases are people coming from other manufacturers, with the majority being from Toyota and Honda. So welcome, Ford newbies. We're glad to have you in our community. Now, do you have a question?
Yeah, we have a few of them. So, Jovic Gascon wants to know any news on the Maverick Hybrid. Do you know when it will start?
Okay, great question. And it looks like it's not starting before this year ends.
Still waiting.
And I don't know why. I can imagine if they're really out of batteries. I would think right now they just don't have batteries coming in. And when they start will depend on when the first shipment comes in. Is it enough batteries to be able to, crank them out? So you're worthwhile to crank them out. If the company can only be sent, 400 batteries or 500 batteries at the factory, well, maybe you say, you know what, we'll put those on the side and we'll wait till the next shipment comes in, so we can really have a proper month of, let's say, if they're going to make 8,000 Mavericks one month, that they make 3,000 of them as hybrids. Okay. Or maybe you make 4,000 of them as hybrids, so then at least when they do start up production again, we're all happy and excited to be able to hear, or in my case, announce that, hey, guess what? Maverick production, 50% was hybrids. That would be a piece of news. That's how I'd market that. But anywho, moving right along. So Maverick, great intel. Not just on the Maverick. Let's talk about great intel at Ford in general. I'm really happy to announce that there is a plan. Ford listens and doesn't just look at profitability. They care about taking care of their customers, probably because long term that's really important for profitability. But maybe that's just me being kind of darkened inside, you could say. But at the end of the day, they do care about customer satisfaction a lot, quite a bit. Good. So here's proof, Mevy. I know you're frustrated with your Maverick, but they're gonna start making the plan. It's planned. It happened a bit this year, but and I announced that on my shows where I talk about production numbers. But for 2023 model years, it is planned to reduce Bronco Sport production to produce more Mavericks. So that is amazing news, and it's incredible because the Bronco Sport generally costs more. And I'm going to talk Canadian right now, so I'm sorry. I hope I don't offend anyone, but generally a Bronco Sport, you're looking at like $45,000 to $50,000. Canadian. How many Mavericks are going to be sold at that price? None. They're just basically mostly all sitting between 30 and 40,000 Canadian, with your occasional, we'll call it the baller edition, an all-out lariat being around 44,000. So the Bronco Sport, same platform, it's got to be more profitable. And considerably more profitable than the Maverick. But they're going to focus on decreasing those Bronco Sports, even though they sell really well and are a good vehicle. I really love the 2-liter turbo. Yeah, we saw a few. My parents have a 2-liter turbo. You love their yellow 2-liter turbo Badlands. And the 1.5 liter is, I thought it was going to be pretty junky and horrible. And it actually, the 1.5 liter, I test drove it and I did a review on it. And I was surprised. My initial hypothesis was, well, I'm going to review this and it's going to be bad. And my final conclusion was, I thought it was going to be bad, and this was actually pretty fun. So that's my quick take on the Bronco Sport. Now, they're going to make less Rangers. So if you're here from the Bronco community, sorry, you get your news last. You had to follow through. Hopefully you stayed for the whole episode and you're here now. But the Bronco news is they're also going to focus on making less Rangers and transferring what normally would have been Ranger production to Bronco production, because Ford says, well, got to make people happy. There's next to no wait list for a Ranger, and there's definitely a wait list at a lot of dealerships for a Bronco. So Bronco production will be up, and in general, predictions, it is believed that overall Ford production will be higher in 2023 than it was for 2022. That's Ford predictions, and that ties in with my prediction that because as soon as they announced the Mach-E Select would be finally, they're like, no, we're backtracking. We said you wouldn't get a heated steering wheel, heated seats, and heated exterior mirrors. Then a couple months went by, and they're like, you know what? We won't build any Mach-E Selects until March, but when we do start building them, they'll have all those things. Well, it just makes sense to me, and I called it right out. I'm like, well, the chip shortage is going to be not too horrible by March. Now, a Ford head, it's in my notes, but names aren't quite as important. But one of the Ford tops did say that they do expect chip shortages and challenges to continue through 2023. But of course, there's going to be challenges. It's going to take years before chip production gets brought back to the US, because at one point the US produced 70% of the world's microchips, and it's actually the less expensive microchips that automobiles need. So a company that only makes microchips has the choice. Make a microchip with a high profit margin, or make a microchip with a very low profit margin and low sales price for the automobile industry. Well, they were also forced to produce less and couldn't just produce everything they could possibly desire and meet, everyone's quotas and everyone's needs. No, they said, well, if we're getting cut back by 30 or 40% of our production, we're going to cut back on those less profit margin microchips, which means the automobile industry got specifically hit harder than, let's say, the microchips used in laptops. They pay more. That's what they focused on continuing to build at more normal levels. And hey, it makes sense. Our drone took 4 months to show up. Our laptop, we got right off the bat. And your Maverick, well, you're still waiting for it.
Yeah,
I'm laughing with you, not at you.
Yeah,
I want that Maverick too.
And to continue about that, we said the Maverick Hybrid is not started yet for the 2023, but
right.
Tim Bartz was asking, he thinks, is it right that the production start last week for the Maverick, maybe EcoBoost?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you hear that?
The EcoBoost did start the 23rd. And
we are lucky.
Yes, and I can say it changed all over the place. When Tim's on my show, I often rely on him because, Tim and I will see dates sometimes change 6 times. And it's like, okay, which one was the right date? And it's impossible to have all your notes on you. Now, Tim is far more organized than me because he has du rangement. English word would be
storage?
Filing cabinets.
Oh,
yeah, or storage. Yeah, you got the better translation, but he's got those files beside him, and I still haven't integrated a filing system into my current office because my current office is actually an unused guest room. But when we go down into the basement, we'll have an entire basement as an office with a nice little studio that will have lots of sound deadening. So expect less echoes. Now the Maverick, I'm looking at one sheet, talking about how they've moved the date around. Back on September 6th, 2022, the Maverick production was supposed to start the 14th of November, but it did start the 23rd. I can absolutely confirm EcoBoost production did start on the 23rd. And Tim had said it really well in his show several weeks ago when he said the Maverick 23 will start being built on the 23. So love the slogans Tim's coming out with. Good memory aids.
Maybe we have a good news because Tim said he had one in his dealership that was I just need to check. Okay, in production, and it was an hybrid.
Oh.
So maybe that's great news. Thank you so much, Tim, to share that with us.
Okay, great. You oddly, and I wonder if it's, I would think it's a 23, obviously, but sometimes things stay in production for a really long time. also known as our Lightning. And my Lightning, I'm not going to let you drive it. You'll get addicted to EV, and then you'll want EV budget.
Expensive for
it's
me.
too expensive, so you don't get to drive.
I'm afraid to smash it. I don't want to drive
No,
it.
that's fine. But my Lightning has been in production on paper since the 28th of October, and its status is still in production. But then you look and it also says its location is at Ramp 51 in Michigan. So, and it's been there actually since I think November 4th. The original the only ETA ever given was November 28th to December 4th, and that's not going to happen. Remember, ETA means estimated time of arrival, and it should also add the letters that would mean expect to be disappointed. Originally we didn't have an ETA, so I bought an F-150 Raptor for the winter, and Nari would continue to drive my Bronco. And would not have bought that had I known the Lightning was coming in. Good thing I didn't have an ETA, because that's not going to come in for the December 4th. If it leaves Michigan tomorrow, the 29th, maybe it shows up in Montreal for the 1st or the 2nd of December. But these days, with how transport works, it's likely going to stay in Montreal anywhere from 4 days to, worst I've seen, is 8 weeks. And actually that is a lot. And the last Lightning that showed up was, between when it was built at factory, and when it showed up, it was also 2 months.
Oof.
Yeah. So
that's sad.
I also bought winter tires and all this, but we just love, who doesn't love spending money? And on that note, I will say that I wish there was more communication out of all manufacturers. And, let's not just pick on Ford. I put a Porsche, a hefty deposit. Porsche dealership wanted $5,000 as a deposit, which I think is a hefty deposit. I know it's only a small portion of the vehicle's price, but that's hefty. And with that $5,000 deposit, I've gotten zero information. None. Zero communication. Like, literally none.
You didn't have a bigger deposit to have more services.
No.
It's just they want to make sure people are
hooked.
How can we say hooked?
Hooked. I'm a fish on a hook.
Serious, I was saying, but yeah, hooked too.
Yeah, but
serious and hooked.
I'm a big fish, so it doesn't mean the real me. And we'll see. They at least they told me you should get your Porsche in 3 years. So who knows? And I know I have heard that at Porsche, if you pay over MSRP, somehow your dealership gets you your Porsche sooner. I have a contact, a long-term contact, and call him kind of an acquaintance, a good acquaintance. We talk shop together. And anyways, he got his Porsche in 10 months, and actually I talk shop with another, and actually it's not so much talking shop, it's just at the gym I work out, there's a guy who's got a Porsche. He only waited 10 months for his Porsche, and he did pay it $5,000 over MSRP. So looks like the price you pay equals the service you get. So, we'll find out when that one day becomes illegal. I know governments are working on trying to get some sort of fair pricing going on. Mm-hmm. So while you work on the next question, if you'd like, I'm going to see what I missed from that important must-know Ford news.
Yeah, at the beginning of the show, we had a question from Sanjib. The 2023 Ford Escape, when is it will be coming to Canada? Do you know?
Yeah, great question. It's actually one of the last models to be producing 2022s, and I cannot for the life of me remember, but I do know that the last printout that I have was looking at Escape production, starting the balance sold out date for the 2023 is actually December 23rd. So they actually plan on building the 23 Escape for basically 12 months, because they're going to start building those 23 Escapes very soon. The original plan date was the 28th of November, which would have been today. So I'll have to get back to you on that, but it's going to be right around now. So basically December, and then they're going to build them for basically 12 months. And the 23 Escape plug-in is actually, So the 2022 Escape, I love the plug-in powertrain, love the handling, love the power. The styling's not for me. Now the 23 styling, I'm digging it, and I actually really love the styling, and you really love the styling of the 23 plug-in Lincoln, which allows you to have a plug-in all-wheel drive, which I think is fantastic. And surprisingly, the cost of the lease on that it's not bad. Okay? It's not for a luxury vehicle, for a really nice luxury vehicle. It's comfortable. It's actually really good. So part of the Don't Be Fooled I want to cover tonight. Now you will see online some videos. Seems to be a bit of this, idea that like, hey, if you buy a Lightning and if you have problems, everyone warned you on the internet. Well, there's every single model, there's always people saying like, oh yeah, no, don't buy that. And there's always people saying you absolutely, no matter what, should buy that. But there's a lot more negative than there is positive. I even saw one short that's actually quite popular of someone saying like, this is what they hate about their Lightning, and don't buy one. I'm warning you. And of course, everyone warned me on the internet not to buy one, so this is partially my fault. Look at how my keyless entry doesn't even work. However, what doesn't work is his Intel. I was going to say his brain, but I don't want to be rude. His Intel and knowledge is off. He puts his thumb right over the lock button. So he tries to open the door by requesting the door to be locked. It's not an unlock button. On your F-150s, gas or electric, you've got a little square that is black. That is, you put your thumb over that or any finger and the key's on you, that's going to lock. You put your hand behind the handle and that's what unlocks those doors. Now, unfortunately, his touchscreen has been changed, and now his second touchscreen is also having an issue. I just want to remind everyone that these touchscreens across all manufacturers are like TVs. You're going to have a certain percentage that are going to break rather quickly or last quite a long time. Like we've got a TV downstairs that must be, well, the one behind us, Marie announced to me today that it's 20 years old, so I could stop being so cheap and buy a new one. And we've got one in the basement that's about 12 years old, but sometimes people buy TV screens and they only last 2 or 3 years. And often they actually break while they're under their 1-year warranty. That's just how electronics generally are. Now, another section of the Don't Be Fooled that I want to cover, and I'll have a full video on it, but there's a lot of talk that the F-150 EcoBoost and actually all EcoBoost engines should be avoided. One of the most popular automotive YouTubers generally says don't ever buy a Ford if it has an EcoBoost engine. Now, I can tell you in the F-150, for the F-150, it's about 80-85% of the sales are EcoBoost, at least in our region, and we have really bad conditions. You can have, minus 30, minus 40 degrees Celsius for 2 weeks straight, and then you can have an entire 5-week span where it's always minus 10 to minus 20 at night, but like plus 5 degrees during the day. So major freeze to a thaw, and that can go on for long periods of time. That is the worst conditions for electronics. And generally, I'm going to do a small video on it, but 305,000 kilometers or 190,000 kilometer truck, 2016, and everything works on it. So I'm going to ruin the punchline, but everything works on it. The air conditioning, the heating, the backup camera still looks amazing. And I just recently purchased at our dealership 2018 GMC, and the backup camera didn't work any longer. I needed a new it wasn't a touch screen, but it needed a new screen, so that was about $800 for the part. Air conditioning, wipers weren't functioning, needed a motor for that, so this thing got about close to $4,000 Canadian put into it. It's a 2018 with 100, and I believe it was 100. It was right around 100, a little over 110,000 kilometers on the truck. So Fords generally are reliable. The EcoBoost engine will be reliable unless you're really unlucky, or if you don't maintain it properly. So if you have a Gen 1 EcoBoost engine, do keep in mind, don't keep that thing running in your yard because it only has direct injection. And I know you've asked me this before, honey. You said, what motor do I prefer on the Bronco? The 2.3 liter or the 2.7 liter? Well, the 4-cylinder, I think, has plenty of power and it's a very enjoyable engine. What bugs me is that it's only direct injection, meaning there will be some carbon buildup, and there's maintenance you can do for that. But if you don't do the maintenance, there is a risk if there's a lot of carbon buildup, which would be from really excessive idling, because when you start the engine cold, until it warms up, it's going to be building up some carbon. And that can ruin the timing chains. That is a very expensive repair. Also, Gen 1 F-150 EcoBoost, only direct injection. So I really like the current generation, well, generation 2 and on, but the current, anything 2015 and up on the EcoBoost engine, I am really liking. Nothing's perfect. Up here in our climate, the 2015 and 2016 F-150s and some 2017 F-150s had the doors freeze on them. So your doors are just frozen. You can't get in your truck. It was the locking mechanism.
Not practical.
On the inside freezing, and it was a matter of a bit of insulation, a bit of locking mechanism. But it got a recall and everyone got that fixed for free. So the WB here, could you help me out with, I lost it on the screen here.
Yeah, so the info center screen on the Mav is at a bad angle, and always get so you particularly I'm not that good with that word, can see the backup camera view. What can I do?
Oh, okay, so you're saying that where your screen's positioned, you're getting light hitting on it, and you're having a bit of trouble seeing the backup camera. Well, the backup camera is actually quite good overall in regards to the overall automobile industry. The backup camera is good, but if you're having trouble seeing it because of sun and light hitting it, Santa Cruz has a similar problem because the whole screen is black and it bugged us. You saw all your fingerprints and the light affected it quite a bit, but you can tint your windows further. Other than that, there's not a whole lot that can be done. I don't know if putting a little tint on the actual screen itself, like a little screen protector that's slightly tinted, would help. I think it's worth the try because you can buy a tint for next to nothing. Just make sure that the adhesive that it comes with isn't gonna be problematic with the screen. So make sure you get the correct type of tint. So definitely if you tint the windows, maybe if you tint the screen.
We have another question about what you were talking about. It's M. Peugeot wants to know if you know how does the carbon build-up harm the timing chains?
I am not an engineer. All I know is I've seen in the garage from time to time some timing chains, engines that are open up, and I've got my friends, so I ask them, hey, what's going on here? And he goes, it's the timing chain. And I go, how come? And he goes, oh, well, without having port injection, carbon buildup, timing chains, I guess stress on them. I wish I had the technical answer, and I really don't. Now, speaking of more technical answers.
You need to ask a mechanician.
Yes, I'll need to ask a mechanic and get back to you, but that is an excellent question. Now, speaking of, not being an engineer, quite possibly an actual engineer, I think it was Jason Benson or Benton, did comment in regards to the transfer case gears. He said if those gears weren't properly, like the whole heating process, heating and hardening process, if that wasn't done correctly, that could also be a reason why the gears would have, maybe had 1 or 2 chips come off. He didn't add this in, but he said that would be a reason why these gears could break. And I could imagine that, if one piece comes off, you could still drive, you'd hear a rattle, but then once it would jam between 2 gears, nothing would move, and then possibly everything would break like glass from that pressure of the gears not being able to turn because of a piece stuck in. And based on Dave from All Terrain Nation explaining what went down, how at first the wheels of the Bronco would still turn, but there was this popping and rattling sound, that kind of sounds like there was one piece or two that was moving around. And then when it jammed, it would make sense if once it jams, it continued trying to pull when it's jamming, could definitely affect those gears. But yeah, I found out that the heating process isn't done correctly, well then the gears could be affected. So we'll find out more on that story as things unfold. Now, I do want to mention Ford has entered into a non-binding agreement with global foundries regarding chip supplies, and discussions about research development initiatives are taking place. So this is from Ford Authority. They got a good quote from Farley saying that Ford will sign more deals with chip makers in the future, and that currently Ford has a sizable number of vehicles on wheels. So yeah, basically Ford really wants to get the chip supply back here in North America, get a hold of it, because yes, as we all know, Ford has quite a few vehicles sitting on wheels missing microchips. Our Lightning was built without the heated steering wheel, and then Ford internal bulletin said all F-150 production for the month of November should absolutely be built with the heated steering wheel, but mine wasn't. So mine's probably sitting, and actually, I know it's sitting because it says microchip on hold as its status, and I really highly suspect that it's missing the microchip, but being that Ford said they wouldn't miss any microchips, it's going to get its heating steering wheel within a reasonable amount of time. At least that the heating steering wheel, the microchip chips will, what's needed will be available. It's just about, it's winter, and it's in Michigan. It's in Michigan. So when will Ford be able to send out employees into the snow or the cold? So let's hope we don't get any heavy snow downfalls and then followed by warm and then freezing, because I'm sure if there's a 3-4 inch layer of ice on that hood, my Lightning is going to turn into maybe an electric mountain, ice mountain situation. So hoping that's not going to be the case. I'm not saying that's my speculation, it's my fear. So when it's I highly suspect it, well, I'll say it. And when I say I highly suspect something, it means that it's very, very likely. So right now, it's just at my fear level. I worry that my Lightning, it's missing its heated steering wheel, and it could potentially, if we get some bad weather that creates several inches of ice on that hood, if they have trouble having access to the vehicle, they're not going to de-thaw and warm these up. So we'll see. And Peugeot says he can only play a mechanic and engineer on the internet. Well, my friend, you're actually quite good at it, and I appreciate your difficult questions, and often you bring some excellent intel. Love how we've got a community here of people who want to help each other. We're not just, saying ridiculous things like, oh, you're this and that for ordering that vehicle, you should know better, you're a dummy. We're not that kind of community. We're like, hey, that's an interesting problem. I'll try to find the solution. That's more of our attitude. When someone has the solution, they go, hey, it could be this, it could be that, or it is this and it is that. So we are loving our community. We look forward to our Monday Night Lives. And on that note, I do believe that I've covered all the really important news. So don't expect inventory, new inventory, used inventory. Yeah, there's a lot of vehicles. You can now get a good deal. Most responsible, smart dealerships are dropping their prices so that they don't have inventory sitting for more than 60 or 90 days. And you can get a deal on used, but on the new, expecting major rebates because there's a lot of inventory. It looks like there's a lot of inventory, but there's not a lot of inventory because of high interest rates. Manufacturers that don't preserve or reserve that interest rate probably will have, anywhere from 15 to 25% drop off, and that will become actual inventory that's available. But really what's going on with the chip shortage is that there is more automobile production, but that production is for customers' orders. And the only way lots are going to slowly fill back up is if, let's say if 20% of customer orders are not taken every month, it's going to take 5 months to get back to proper inventory. And inventory is speculated, the pros over at Auto News and, the people that I mentioned earlier, they're they're suspecting that we will have inventory, but it's still going to be far from what it was about 2 years ago. So if you want to check out more on those stories, Ford Authority, Automotive News, and Auto Forecast Solutions, they're the ones that are saying for 2023 we'll have more inventory, but about half, roughly half. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I got notes here saying it's roughly half of what it was, pre all these problems we've been having. So thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate all the assistance from everyone. You get a big farewell from the puppies. She was jumping all over me, so that's how she ended up in the show tonight. So thank you so much. Hit that like button to get this information out there. Do subscribe to help feed and dress those poodles. It is deeply appreciated. And until next time, we do wish you, why don't you say it this time?
And we wish you more cars and more poodles.
No, it's more cars and more power, honey.
Yeah, I know. And we will tell you that don't miss the show of Kelly and Dave tonight, All Terrain Nation. So it's tonight.
Yeah, so they're doing a live. They're always a hoot to hang out with. So don't miss out on that. And tomorrow night, you've got Tim Bartz live. And I did want to mention Mitchell Watts has a new channel called Driven Electric. And it is really good. His new channel, you want to subscribe to that. He does cover how the F-150 Lightning, it's about $40,000 to replace an entire battery. And of course, modules, the Ford batteries on the Mach-E and the Lightning, they come in modules. So each module is about, not quite, roughly $4,000. But changing the battery with labor is about $40,000. However, he does really a great job at pointing out that an ICE engine, so a V8 5-liter F-150, you would spend a lot less money changing that engine. However, if you incorporate your what you pay more in gas, the replacement cost is actually the same. There's only a few $100 difference. Now, of course, you'd have to ignore, so you could say that replacing a battery on a Lightning and replacing an engine on gas-powered F-150 is the same price when you take into account all that extra money you spent on gas rather than spending on electricity. So electricity, he used his federal average of 14 cents per kilowatt. Here, we're at half of that. But based on his numbers, same price. However, the Lightning does cost more, but I must say the Lightning is more vehicle. Yes, there's no sound, but this thing is unbelievably fast with unbelievable handling. It is pretty unbelievable. It's an incredible machine, and that's why I think it's worth spending extra money on if you really like power, and I do. So that's why I'm getting a Lightning. I want to throw that out there and plug Driven Electric with Mitchell Watts. Check it out. Till next time, take care and stay safe.